Tiburon. The U.S.-Mexican War of 1846-1848, a decisive step in the territorial expansion of the United States in the mid-19th century, was the war with Mexico in 1846-1848. Causes of the war. The main cause of the war lay in territorial disputes between the United States and Mexico. In 1845, Texas, which had declared independence from Mexico back in 1836, joined the United States. That same year, Mexico recognized Texas's independence. But in response to its annexation by the U.S., Mexico broke off diplomatic relations with Washington. The immediate pretext for war was a border dispute. Both Mexico and the United States claimed the land between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River. The resolution of the issue depended on where the southern and western borders of Texas were to be drawn. Most of this disputed area, populated almost exclusively by Mexicans, was under Mexican control. Attempts at diplomatic settlement, the Slidell mission, failed. Both sides expected a quick and decisive victory and were unwilling to compromise. War aims. The United States sought recognition of Texas's annexation, the establishment of the Rio Grande as the border, and territorial expansion at Mexico's expense, particularly the acquisition of Upper California, with the ports of San Francisco and San Diego, New Mexico, and possibly other territories. Expansion was viewed as a vital requirement of American society's development. Mexico aimed to defend its territorial integrity, secure its claims to disputed lands, and, if possible, reclaim Texas. For the Mexican government, success in the war was also tied to restoring its shaken domestic authority after the loss of Texas. The situation on the eve of war. Neither side had properly prepared for war, though both massed troops near the disputed zone early in 1846. U.S. forces under General Zachary Taylor camped at Corpus Christi, on the Nueces, but already on disputed ground, while Mexican troops under General Francisco Mejia were at Matamoros on the Rio Grande. On March 8, 1846, by President Polk's order, Taylor advanced to the Rio Grande, building a fortified camp, Camp Texas, opposite Matamoros. By April, Mexican forces under Generals Pedro Ampudia and Mariano Arista had reinforced Matamoros. On April 24th, Mexican cavalry clashed with a U.S. Dragoon patrol, killing 11 and capturing the rest. Border battles on May 8 to 9, 1846. The first major engagements took place at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma. Despite numerical superiority, Mexican forces under Arista were defeated by Taylor's smaller army thanks to superior U.S. artillery. Mexican losses over the 2 days reached more than 1,000 men, while U.S. losses were minimal. On May 18, 19, American troops occupied Matamoros, stepping onto Mexican soil proper. Lessons of the opening phase. The Americans who had provoked the war soon yielded initiative due to poor planning. Taylor's maneuvers reflected supply issues and his own lack of resolve. Yet the Mexicans, despite having numbers and initiative, failed to exploit their advantages. The U.S. Army at the time was small, about 17,000 men in spring 1846, and plagued by desertion. Only after hostilities began did Congress authorize $10 million and $50,000 six-month volunteers. Recruitment was slow and uneven, often requiring threats of forced conscription. Northeastern Theater. In September 1846, Taylor with 6,000 men captured Monterey after a 3-day battle against Ampudia's 10,000. Despite victory, Taylor agreed to an 8-week truce, which Washington later rejected. In February 1847, Santa Anna led 20,000 men north to defeat Taylor before U.S. reinforcements could land on the coast. On February 22-23 at Buena Vista, Taylor's 4,500 mostly volunteer troops repelled Santa Anna's numerically superior army thanks to defensive positions and artillery. Western Theater, California and New Mexico. On June 14, 1846, American settlers in California, supported by John C. Fremont's expedition, declared the Bear Flag Republic. Within weeks, U.S. naval forces occupied Monterey, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Though Californians briefly expelled U.S. forces in September, combined land and naval forces retook Los Angeles in January 1847 after victories at San Gabriel and La Mesa. Meanwhile, General Stephen Kearny's expedition occupied Santa Fe, New Mexico, in August 1846, proclaiming annexation. Colonel Alexander Doniphan later won at Sacramento, February 28, 1847, seizing Chihuahua. Naval operations Mexico had only 2 significant warships, which were sold to Britain. Thus, the U.S. Navy quickly dominated the Gulf of Mexico, blockading ports and securing landing operations. Central Mexico General Winfield Scott launched the decisive campaign by landing 10,000 men near Veracruz on March 9, 1847. After an 18-day siege, Veracruz fell on March 27. Scott then marched inland, defeating Santa Ana at Cerro Gordo, April 18, and occupying Puebla in May. In August, Scott's 11,000 troops defeated Mexican forces at Contreras in Churubusco, then captured Chapultepec on September 13. On September 14, 1847, Scott entered Mexico City unopposed as Santa Anna's forces retreated. The peace settlement. Despite the occupation of the capital, guerrilla resistance continued and peace negotiations dragged on. Finally, on February 2, 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. Mexico ceded Texas, with the Rio Grande as the boundary, California and New Mexico, over half its national territory. The U.S. paid $15 million in compensation, a token sum compared to its $100 million war expenditure. Consequences: Mexico lost 55% of its territory and all claims to great power status in the Americas. The United States greatly expanded its territory, enhanced its prestige, and emerged as a leading power in the Western Hemisphere. U.S. victory is often explained by its economic and naval superiority. However, on land, Mexico often had numerical advantage. What proved decisive was U.S. artillery, better maneuvering, and Mexico's poor leadership. The war fulfilled the U.S. expansionist vision of the era, manifest destiny, while for Mexico it was a national catastrophe.